From the National Weather Service in Raleigh, here is your routine Thursday weekly briefing for Central North Carolina. This briefing covers the period today through next Wednesday through the 22nd of January. And of course, these briefings here are an update to our typical routine Monday briefing. And we always try to, heading into the weekend, we always like to give folks an update in terms of if anything's changed since we last provided our routine briefing this past Monday. So anyway, and I think there is some interesting weather, or potentially interesting weather here coming up. So let's dive right into the weather pattern slide. And you'll see here, oh, I've advanced one too many there. All right, there we go. So there's the upcoming weather pattern. And I'll draw your attention to the upper left where you see high pressure extending over the area. So that will provide dry weather today and Friday with temps a little more seasonable than what we've seen recently. As we head into the weekend, that's our next weather maker you see there on the upper right. There's going to be a warm front lifting to the north, and right on its heels, a cold front that will swing through late on Saturday. So we're going to see precipitation moving into the area Saturday morning, and perhaps a little band of rain swinging through during the late day. So that cold front will move through, and that'll bring a chance for, as I pointed out, some light rain. However, with the chilly air in place and strong high pressure to our north, we could see a very brief, low impact, and I'll emphasize low impact because of the very brief low amounts, a very low impact episode of freezing rain possible across the northwest Piedmont on Saturday. And right now the models are suggesting mainly during the late morning into the afternoon hours as the first batch of precip moves into the area. At this point, only trace amounts of ice are expected with little or no, probably no, I guess would be the most likely outcome, impacts. And that's for the Triad area and points west. So the further you go west, of course, into the colder air where it begins a little sooner in the day when it's a little cooler start to the day, could see, obviously a tad more ice, but still for our Triad areas as it relates to Central North Carolina weather, really we're not expecting any travel impacts or power outages or anything like that, just because it'll be very light ice amounts. It'll be very brief batch. But just wanted to mention that anyway, because certainly don't want anybody to be surprised if they see a little bit of freezing rain at the onset of the precipitation across the Triad in the early midday hours on Saturday. East of the Triad, really, it's going to just be too warm for any ice, and that first batch would come through as rain. All right, so looking at the bottom two parts of the graphic, early next week and middle of next week, you're going to see high pressure parked right over our area. So a drying and cooling trend will evolve in the wake of Saturday's cold front, and then dry and more seasonable weather expected during the first half of next week. So temperatures a little closer to where they should be this time of year. Here's a severe thunderstorm potential for days 1 through 3 today, Friday, and Saturday. And not only are there no severe thunderstorms expected, there's no thunderstorms at all of any kind expected the next 3 days. All right, in terms of the rainfall amounts, we like to show these graphics to give you a sense of both when it may rain and how much. And you can see dry today and Friday. And then there is the rain indicated there for Friday or Saturday rather. And rainfall amounts will be pretty light, maybe a ½ inch or less for most parts of Central North Carolina. And as I pointed out, that third bullet is a duplicate of what I elaborated on earlier. Again, could be a very brief episode of freezing rain across the northwest Piedmont. Again, only trace amounts of ice, little or no impacts expected for the Triad area. Once that front blows through, then we get into a drying trend. Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday and Wednesday are dry on these maps. So that is the rainfall forecast. All right, I wanted to focus a little bit. I wanted to, have a slide or two to focus on that brief low impact episode of freezing rain. And you can see here's the radar forecast, or simulated what the radar may look like from the period 10 a.m. Saturday through 1 a.m. Sunday. And you can see that first initial batch of precip. That's the batch of precip that could perhaps take advantage of some dry, cool air that will be in place Saturday morning to set the stage for perhaps a very brief episode of light freezing rain. I think that graphic 4 p.m. Saturday, I think that's probably a little bit too aggressive. Again, this is just one particular model, and this is a worst case scenario, I might add, and really even even the worst case is only a trace amount of ice. So, but in terms of the timing, I bet you that'll be all green by 4 p.m. Saturday. I think this particular model is holding on to the freezing rain, the pink shading a little bit too long. So if I had to make a manual correction to that, I'd change at 4 p.m. on Saturday. I'd change all that pink to green. And then by 7 p.m. by evening Saturday and by 10 p.m. Saturday, it's going to be warm enough for rain everywhere. And then we'll have kind of the last push of rain. And when I say push of rain, it's not even going to be that much. Again, when you add it all up, maybe about a ½ inch of rain for most folks, or perhaps even less. Okay, and then it's out of here by during the overnight on Sunday. In terms of how much, again, these graphics, now we're too early in the stage here of the forecast process to be issuing any kind of ice accumulation graphics. We don't have one yet even developed. So what we look at is we look at the range of possibilities from models, and we take that range and we turn that into a probabilistic. What are my chances of seeing, certain amounts of freezing rain? And this is from the WPC website on their freezing rain maps. And for a 24-hour period encompassing, basically Saturday, what is the likelihood of seeing greater than or equal to 1/100th of an inch of freezing rain? So we're talking a trace, basically, or maybe a little bit more than a trace. And what is the likelihood of that? And you can see the shading there would suggest from basically, Burlington west is where the shading is. Once you get east of Burlington and south of Burlington, roughly, there's no shading, meaning there's no chance whatsoever of any freezing rain. But you could see the probabilities for that freezing rain is the highest the further north and west you go. So in the Winston-Salem, Greensboro area, we're only looking at about a 20% chance of seeing just a trace of freezing rain, versus say up around Boone, where you're looking at 40, 50, 60% chance of a trace of freezing rain. So clearly, the amounts, as the amounts are elaborated in the coming days of our forecast, clearly you're going to see maybe a little bit more of a mention of freezing rain across the western and northwest portions of the state of North Carolina. For the triad, though, we're looking at very light, fleeting freezing rain episode, not really going to cause much of a problem. The graphic next to that on the right is what are the probabilities of rain accumulating a greater than 1/10 of an inch. Okay, now keep in mind our warning criteria for freezing rain is 1/4 inch, so this is even well below our warning criteria. And you can see there's 0% chance of freezing rain, ice accumulating 1/10 of an inch. So I hope these two graphics kind of put it into perspective that, I'm probably already talking too much about this ice event. It's not going to be a big deal. All right. So, but and I also wanted to mention that models have been trending later in terms of precip arrival. And that's good news, because the later in the day it arrives, the warmer it will be during the daytime, and the lesser the duration and impacts for any freezing rain that occurs. All right. So again, not a big deal. Don't worry about this one so much. If you go west of Winston-Salem, it could be maybe a touch more freezing rain. All right, let's move on to something else here. 8 to 14 day outlook. Peeking further into the future, because there's a lot of social media chatter out there about, what's it going to be like here at the end of the month. I've seen even some social media chatter about a winter storm in the last few days of the month. And I'll just point out here that the Climate Prediction Center, when looking at the range of longer range models they evaluate, they again put it into probabilistic terms. And the odds favor neither above or below normal temperature, rather, for that 8 to 14 day outlook. Obviously, it could go either way at this point based on the models. And the models are also suggesting a slight tilt in the odds towards above normal precipitation. I think, based on everything I've seen, the models are hinting that perhaps we might get into a cooler period of weather, more of a colder temperatures. And remember, if you want a winter storm around here, you need the cold air first. You got to start with the cold air. like before the precip arrives, and at least perhaps a couple days of it. And the colder the better, right? So it will turn colder later next, in the later portions of next week. So at that point, it's just a matter of, do we get a storm system that comes up and takes advantage? Suffice it to say, obviously, we're going to be keeping our eyes on this period of weather. It is late January, so inevitably we're going to get some winter weather event at some point this winter. So anyway, we're keeping our eyes on it, but there's nothing out there right now that says slam dunk, hey, we're going to have a major winter storm on a certain day. So anyway, just wanted to point that out because I did see some social media chatter out there about a winter storm late in the month. All right, so let's kind of wrap this up, and I've probably taken too much of your time already here for this low impact weather briefing, but dry weather today and Friday with temps a little more seasonable. A cold front will move through our area late Saturday, bringing the chance for some light rain to central North Carolina during the daytime Saturday. And, very brief low-impact episode of freezing rain is possible across the northwest Piedmont Saturday, mainly during the late morning into the afternoon hours as the first batch of precip moves into the area. At this point, only trace amounts of ice with little or no, probably no, impacts are expected for the Triad area. And then behind that system, a drying and cooling trend will evolve in the wake of that front, and that'll set us up for dry and seasonable weather expected during the first half of next week. So that is the weekly briefing update for Thursday, and as we head into the weekend. Thank you for joining for this Thursday edition of your weekly briefing.